Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode. Today's subject, very excited about this one, I'm very passionate about, uh, is around the future of APIs and specifically around this evolving API ecosystems that we talk about. We talk about API first and really how a developer platform and experience is actually adapting to these new changing needs. So great to have everyone here today. We have some amazing industry leaders and we're going to have a great discussion. So today I am joined by Nelson Petracek, Global CTO of TIPCO Software, author of API Success, and which is a journey to the digital transformation, with a new book on the way. And please check it out. We have Bytes Behind the Blocks. It's an architect's guide to blockchain. Definitely an exciting time to read about that. So definitely check it out. We have a short URL, tipco.co/book. And you can get more information there. And not the best for last year, the industry's most loved API evangelist, Kin Lane. Great to have Kin back into my world. We know each other from many earlier days in the API world. He is Postman's chief evangelist at Postman and author of The Business of APIs. So jumping right into it, Kin, could you just go a little deeper, tell us about yourself and what your role is at Postman and really how it relates to the university APIs? It sounds like such a great title, Chief Evangelist. Would love to know how you define that, and you must get to know a lot of different people from many cross-functional teams.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you having me being here. Good to see you again, Colin and Nelson. Good to connect. So I'm chief evangelist at Postman. My CEO came up with that title. It was kind of derived from API evangelist. I'm like, well, what does it mean? What am I supposed to be doing? He's like, keep doing what you're doing, and you'll figure it out. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm keep doing what I've been doing for years, which is really helping enterprise organizations think through their API strategy, lifecycle, and governance. I started doing it in 2010. I think those early days where I first started stumbling across you, Colin, I think early Mashery days, but studying the API lifecycle, the Mashery, Apogee, 3Scale, the early days, and then went to work for the Obama administration for a while doing API strategy for the federal agencies in 2013 and 14. And then by 2019, I felt like I had my PhD in APIs and I needed to apply that and get a little more hands-on. And I couldn't think of a better place to do it than Postman, which has been evolving beyond just being an API client and testing tool to a full lifecycle platform. And so that's really what I spend my days doing. Is I'm chief evangelist, so I tend to be the voice when it comes to our largest enterprise customers. But I run our open technologies group, which is four layers. It's our developer relations team, so pretty straightforward, getting people excited about APIs. The second group is our lifecycle and governance team, so working on standardizing how we talk about the API lifecycle, how we apply governance using spectral and other approaches. And then the third group is our specifications and tooling group, so Open API and Swagger. The JSON schema working group is on my team. The async API working group is on my team. GraphQL, gRPC, WebSockets, even SOAP and EDI is part of my mandate. And then the fourth group is data standards and intelligence. So how does data fit in? Fair data practices, standards, industry standards like FHIR, PSD2, and then machine learning. How do we apply machine learning to all of this? So those four layers for me really represent kind of what the groundwork that we're laying right now for the future of enterprise APIs.
That's great. And you mentioned something there, and maybe I'll open this as maybe the first question to Nelson and you can, is getting folks excited about APIs, right? And the talk of API first in terms of from a business perspective. What does it actually mean to both of you when it comes to API first? Is it a business term just thrown around, or is it really something that is about making developers' lives happy and making a better experience? I'm just curious what your thoughts were there, being industry leaders.
I don't know, Kenny, you want to go first? Either way. I mean, I know I'm going to say it's a little bit of all of the above, what you just described, Colin. I mean, I think in some, it depends on who you talk to in your organization. Although I do think that now the perception and the realization of what APIs can enable has changed. So originally it might have been a developer only thing. Or it was some kind of magic term that the business would throw around because they felt that that would solve all their problems. That there was sort of those two ranges that you would run into. But now I think there's more convergence and there's more a better understanding of what APIs can bring to an organization, both from a developer standpoint, time to market, speed of delivery, standardization, and so on. And then on the business side, enabling them to even build new products or present new functionality and capabilities to their customers, again, faster, cheaper, more broadly, and so on and so forth. So I'll start with that as an initial comment. I think it used to be more pocketed, and depending on who you talk to, they would talk about the value of APIs in a different way. But now I think people look at it a little more holistically, just because there's better maturity, better tooling, more information, and they've had some experience. I think that's really where it's coming from.
Yeah, agree. I would agree with that. API first for me is it's about businesses prioritizing APIs over the application of those digital resources, capabilities, and experiences, and realizing you got to have a strategy for how you do this, and it is elevating it to the business prioritization. It's not just a technical priority; it's a business priority, and getting more business stakeholders involved in that life cycle so that you have product managers who are involved in, and you're actually treating your APIs as a product. You have that customer centricity, you have that feedback loop with it. So the what's historically known as APIs is very much that developer life cycle around APIs, producing and consuming. But the generation we're in right now is very much elevated to business, and API first is makes it more inclusive, I think, to a business audience. I would say, it's one of those phrases that means a lot to a lot of people, but it's also a little bit hollow, meaningless enough, or means different things to different people. It's kind of like cloud, like cloud means so many different things, but API first fits that very well. But I don't want to diminish it. It's actually a very powerful phrase that I think business leadership, technical and business, are getting behind and understanding, and it means much more than just the technical details.
And now, do you believe the expectations, though, are getting much larger from a developer's perspective? When you say API, it doesn't mean that you're just giving them a nice REST API that'll give them 200 OK, it'll work. They want the whole ball of wax. They want a good developer experience. They want great documentation. They want good support. They want the community. It's almost like API first, kind of like, I think maybe bundles all those together. I mean, do you think the expectations now, being at Postman, you get to see a lot of folks using Postman tool. I've used it. Is expectations getting larger and larger from the developer community to have these experiences that are, no one gets a PDF document anymore, and you say good luck. It's got to be magic, right?
Yeah, I mean, the baseline of, portal up to date docs that actually reflect what's going on, and the other resources, SDKs, reducing not just time to first call, but time to first value. You're actually generating value for the consumer as well as the producer. Is the baseline, is the expectation, and developers don't have a lot of patience for internal or external APIs. This isn't just a public API thing. Is
Right.
Those things have to be there, and it's more than just having to provide the raw resources so you can create, read, update, and delete on resources. These APIs and the experience around them has to enable a business outcome, a positive, meaningful business outcome for both the producer and consumer. And so we're getting beyond the early Wild West kind of caveman period where we create, read, update, delete our resources, and it's got to have business value. Otherwise, it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, and we see that as well. I mean, it's so definitely the expectations have changed, both on the developer side as well as organizationally. There are also now new and expanded roles as a result. So it's no longer just the paradigm of the developer that's creating these APIs. I mean, the goal here is to treat many of them as products, and so then you've got marketing that's often associated with that, and that's internal and external. You've got support teams, you've got documentation teams. There's obviously the product managers. There's a lot of other roles now that have been defined because of this evolution of APIs. API first, APIs, products, and so on and so forth. And so the expectation around the experience of APIs has definitely changed. And that as a result, you've seen the emergence of these new roles to support that expectation as well. And again, that's both internal and external. People forget that you have to market internal APIs just like in many ways, like you have to market external facing APIs. Some of those roles, they might be slightly different internally, but you need somebody at least doing part of those roles, even for internal APIs.
And Nelson, you mentioned something interesting there. When it comes to marketing APIs, I've heard the old adage, you can't really market to developers. You just give them good documentation, or you just make sure you answer their questions. But
sure.
When it comes to actually marketing the concept of APIs to the developer community, but also to the business, how do you do that? And I even think of like back in the days of when I was at Mashery and going to all these hackathons and everyone's wearing their t-shirts and they're trying to get developers involved at a hackathon, that type of marketing. Has this all evolved to something else now? How do you best market an API platform? I'll put that out there.
I mean, you have to demonstrate. You have to demonstrate the value, demonstrate how to use it. So my DevRel team, our OKRs are based upon write a blog post, do a video, do a talk, a webinar, whatever the components are in the DevRelian toolbox, do it. But each one's got to have a public workspace and a collection and or an open API that demonstrates what you're talking about. So tell the story, market it, but show how it works. Make it something you can fork, you can repeat and use. And so that demonstrating, the storytelling combined with demonstrating is how you do that. And that's why the hackathon has been such a thing, is because there's that doing, that building that developers like, and that's what developers focus on. So if you're marketing in your outreach internally or externally, it focuses on making it something that provides value, provides meaning, and you're demonstrating and proving it. Developers are gonna, they love marketing in that sense. The phrase, I'm a developer and I get it. Like, I don't want to be sold and marketed to, but I just don't want BS stories and fake ones that aren't real and the rubber doesn't meet the road. That's where I'm at. But if it's for real, like a real story that impacts, my business and has value, and then I can put it to work, it's something I can grab and just start running and using. Yeah, I want to be marketed too.
Yeah, and that's why the ecosystem around it is so important. I mean, if a developer goes and at least is aware of your API, awareness is often the first thing. And if they're aware at it, and if they're aware of it, and they look at it and they go, there's no sample code, or the sample code is old, or it doesn't work, or doesn't compile, or whatever these things. There's no documentation. I have no idea what they do in terms of versioning. These are all things that are going to be important to me as a developer. If I don't have that, I'm just going to move on. I'm likely going to find a different solution. On the business side, you're going to market a little differently. So now you're going to show the value that this approach is bringing you, whether it's through faster adoption of your different products, whether it's by enabling you to rapidly assemble new services quickly, easy, fast, in accordance to changes that are going on in the market, or what my competitors are doing, or I need to pivot quickly because of the world changing, or whatever it is, and then I need visibility into that. So if I'm marketing from a business standpoint, well, what are the metrics that matter to me? And can I get those metrics from my APIs, right? And how do I translate that into my metrics? So whether I'm measured based on revenue or some form of another form of adoption, whatever that might be. If you're going to market to me about the value of APIs, put it in my words, if you will, and then instrument and give me the visibility into what's going on. Not once a month, but I want to be able to look it up daily, hourly, whatever the time period happens to be. So very different for them as well.
And I wonder, as the journey continues, just in terms of API ecosystems, have you seen different flavors emerging? It always used to be SOAP versus REST versus, okay, now GraphQL, gRPC. What do you think? Are we heading toward something that's more interesting than just an API that you can actually pull from a URL in your web browser that happened behind the scenes for microservices and whatnot? Are we going to evolve past REST? I wonder what you're all thinking. To think about the actuals.
Happy to dive in here. I mean, I would say we're not going to evolve past REST. REST is a foundational base. It's the web. It's ubiquitous. It's low cost. It's easy to implement. Speaks to the widest audience. It's your base level of resources. And organizations who don't have an API gateway and an API management strategy and haven't been building that base of RESTful resources, digital resources, are not as far along in their digital transformation as the rest of us, because the ones who have been building those RESTful resources and then realizing the limitations and the shortcomings of a RESTful approach when it comes to a large data graph and a known set of users that are building single page apps, you need GraphQL to start stitching things together and getting out of their way. When it comes to event-driven and high volume APIs that have a lot of different events, you got to start firing up Kafka, WebSockets, NATs, whatever it may be, but add an event-driven layer on top of it. And you need your internal pipes to be really defined, industrial grade gRPC, because they're high volume. So really, what we're seeing and our roadmaps kind of reflected this is we started as an HTTP API client at Postman, and now we're a gRPC, a WebSockets, we're a multi-protocol client. And what we're expanding that to now is how do you produce APIs in a consistent way across those multiple protocols and patterns? So how do you document? How do you mock? How do you test? Whether it's a gRPC, WebSockets, or RESTful. And so you have common lifecycle, common governance practices across multiple protocols and patterns, and you have a really diverse, rich toolbox that your teams are able to go out and apply for the right situation. And I would add in MQTT and MQP into that toolbox. So you're going IoT and devices. So it's really just about a diverse toolbox that's going to get you what you need, and that's enterprise grade. And your teams are equipped across that spectrum. But REST is always going to be the base digital resources. But when you're building those experiences that actually matter to business and consumers, you need event-driven, you need rich data layers stitched together. So you need those other patterns and protocols.
Yeah, and we've seen that as well, right? I mean, I equate it to, not everything is a relational database. Well, it's a core for sure, not going away anytime soon, but you are going to augment it with document stores or graph stores or whatever it is, based on whatever your use case is, what you're trying to achieve. The implementation of APIs is similar in nature, where you're going to have different protocols. GraphQL, you're going to use gRPC. People have lots of microservices. Not all those microservices are request reply. They're going to have some asynchronous event-driven patterns. There's this maturity process that people are going through, where they might have started with saying, yeah, microservices, that just means REST over HTTP. And then as they've gotten more mature and found some of the shortcomings in certain areas, then they're like, oh, well, we could enrich that with GraphQL, or we could enrich that with async API specification, on top of Kafka, or whatever those things are. So you're starting to see these other patterns and protocols, capabilities, whatnot, kind of blending into that world. Core foundation, the rest is still there. But we also have SOAP and WSDLs and things like those are still there from years ago. So we just got to deal with that. So it's no longer, it's not a one size fits all, right? It's going to be quite varied for some time.
Many different flavors, right? I mean, when it comes to some of the emerging focus areas, even for TIBCO Labs around IoT and around AI, maybe we'll open that chapter up a little bit, Nelson, is, how do you see APIs play into the IoT space and in the AI space? How do we imagine the new ecosystems or where businesses will need to really pay attention to in those areas? Because everyone's like, yeah, I want to get into IoT. Maybe they need to start with an API thinking first. I'm curious where your thoughts lie there.
Yeah, and I think you kind of eased into this idea that you're finding APIs in more places is kind of the way that I would describe it, right? So IoT is one context in which people are saying, well, all this API stuff that I've been doing internally with my organization and deploying it in, with gateways or service meshes or whatever the technology is, can I extend the same concepts and subsequently get a lot of the same benefits by pushing out this API set of principles out to the edge? And whether that's now using APIs to abstract or create layers in front of devices, whether it's to create IoT streaming data pipelines that include AI/ML as part of those pipelines, again at the edge or close to the edge, you're seeing some of those principles kind of bleed over, if you will, into areas like IoT. But you can say that with other things, like there's data as a service now. That people are focused on. Well, APIs are a core element of data as a service capabilities. There's analytics as a service. So I'm taking model ops and I'm exposing analytical models as a service that are now consumable by the rest of the organization. Well, what drives that? It's an API interface. Blockchain, you mentioned blockchain. There again, smart contracts. Smart contracts have an API interface to allow the rest of the organization to interact with a public or private blockchain network. So you're seeing APIs or the focus around APIs show up in more places, as you alluded to at the first of the conversation around IoT, for sure.
And, it's, yeah, go ahead, Ken. I don't know if you were saying something. Or if
no, I can second the same. I mean, it's a diverse landscape, and having an API strategy to approach that, so you're not reinventing the wheel when it comes to docs. All the things that we've gotten with API management over the last decade and 10, 20 years, you don't want to reinvent that wheel for every new little API layer to come along. Reuse.
Yeah, and I think about the type of things that APIs do for developers. In a way, they're a shortcut. Let's say I don't have a PhD in data science. I don't know how it works, but if an organization, an AI organization, gave me an API where I could build a model with a curl command and then do a prediction. Okay, I just built my own AI. But I'm not a data scientist. So in a way, are APIs making it easier to access some really interesting emerging technologies like AI? I'm curious if you're seeing more and more of that in the industry or a demand for that where, developers are raising their hand. They're like, I don't need to know how to do it. Just give me the docs to do a couple curl commands.
Yeah, abstracting away the complexities of any of these layers, any of these slices of either technology or business, and making it easier, equipping developers with something. And I kind of cringe saying this now, but shift left. Like, how do you shift everything left and equip developers? And this isn't about giving developers more work. This is about wrapping something and then giving them as a tool in their toolbox. And I'm seeing this with machine learning in that the days of our grandfather's AI and Watson and this big brain and massive AI that knows everything just didn't really pencil out, and isn't really where it's at. But you give developers the ability to train models, little micro models, incrementally from the data of a fleet, traveling around a commercial fleet of vehicles or something, and that data coming in from that. And if you can build incremental models and then apply, have successes, have losses, things that work, things that didn't, and then increment and iterate and move forward rapidly. That's much more doable, much more realistic, and then applying massive AI to everything. And so I'm seeing a lot of that is augmenting developers with data skills they don't have, because training up data scientists is expensive. Machine learning skills they don't have, because training up machine learning people, you can only train so many on those fronts. But how do we wrap that and then in an API and give it to a developer to actually be able to do something? That's really definitely one of the API fronts we see unfolding.
Yeah, I think the one thing you always have to be, there's one additional aspect to that I know we have found out with customers, is that they have to be aware of any potential side effects, let's say, though, of making it, I don't want to make it too easy, is not the right word, but you have to, there is thought that goes into assembling these building blocks, because you need to be aware of what that building block, its intent does, and any side effects that it might have. So because we've had that with a few customers where, it's just magic, we just call all these models. Like, wonderful. Do you know what any of them do? Yeah, not really, but we just put them everywhere. It's like, well, no. not quite going to work. So there is certainly that element of, and it goes back to the documentation and making sure the examples are there and the right context is there, so that as a developer, when I'm assembling a capability from all these building blocks, which are front-ended by APIs, I know when is their appropriate time to use them, even if I don't understand the data science behind them. So we've had some experiences with that as well.
Amen.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, we keep talking about documentation and the experience. If I were to look 10 years ago, again, it's like the golden years of excitement about the API platform. Every brand out there had developer dot, whatever the brand name is. You go there, it's a developer portal. You sign up, you get your API, and you have a problem. You look at your documentation. That was kind of the experience. All is expected. And now here we are today. How do we look at the portal, right? What is developers.whateverbrand.com? What is the expectation there? Is it documentation just getting at the API, or is it a lot more now? And I guess a leading question there, is it more of a monetization play? Is it more of a marketing play? Is it a marketplace? These are some of the things I've seen emerging, and I'm curious, as we kind of close out our conversation, what your thoughts are. What is the portal gonna be?
Yeah, I think it's similar to REST and others. It's a foundational component. It's not going anywhere. But what I'm seeing a lot of and responding to is it's not always keeping up with the pace of business. And having a central location to go find things is great, but it needs to be up to date. It needs to actually reflect what's going on the ground. So I see a lot of groups struggling with that, with trying to keep it up to date. And how do we, the contracts, the Swagger Open API contracts, we publish that. How do we correct for drift between that and what's in production? And from a documentation, but also the rest of the experience around that. And then the other is there's a lot of anxiety around visibility of APIs, so private versus partner versus public. Mm-hmm. So how do you address that smoothly and in a way that makes sense? So one portal, can't rule them all in that case. But then really developer experience is what I see really changing the conversation around this, is that not everyone cares to go to the developer dot. And hey, I went there, I'm a product manager, it doesn't speak to me. I really don't care. But you know what? The blog posts you're writing, or the videos, or the webinars you're doing, or the other marketing-esque DevRelian things, those things speak to me, or the wiki page, or the memo, the internal memo. So what we're seeing a lot of folks do is they have their they have their reference documentation. And in Postman speak, you build a reference collection or generate it from your open API. Here's all of the reference points you need. And then you'll see teams create an onboarding collection. So here's the endpoints you will only need to get started. Don't worry about the rest until you understand what's going on. Here's only what you need. And then we're seeing use case collections a lot of times. So you're going to build a specific workflow for a specific business use case. Here's the 18 endpoints you're going to need from our API. Right. And oh, look, here's how you're going to use Twilio in there and SendGrid and Stripe. And so here's a business use case. Here's a set of documentation for that. And doesn't always make sense to hang those in a central portal. So accompanying those with a blog post, with a video, with something that a business stakeholder is going to care about and go, no, I'm interested in that. That doc makes sense to me. That speaks to my business use case. I'll onboard with that. And so that's that developer experience kind of breaking up and getting people's attention, speaking to their use case it's working better, or alongside it's augmenting the portal experience. So if you need to know, you can go to the portal to find what you need. It's a good clearinghouse and a marketplace, but APIs have to be part of business operations everywhere else in all the nooks and crannies. So you have to have a way of managing that experience as well.
I mean, are product managers going to portals to learn about a use case, right? I mean, is that the persona as well?
Sometimes, but it's not. A lot of developer portals don't speak to product managers yet, and a lot of these organizations, sometimes they do, but I'm seeing a lot more product managers realize they can create a subset of an experience to A/B test. They'll create a collection, create a video and a blog post that goes with it. In the collection, they'll put a header, and they'll embed that using a run and Postman button in the video, in the blog post. And so everyone onboards, they hit that collection. And then when they're making calls, those calls to the gateway, that header's in there. And so they're using it as a KPI to go, well, that experience worked, that experience didn't work. And they're A/B testing different experiences, but then using their gateway analytics to actually understand and segment that. And then they may pipe it into their APM solution further. But because of those widening roles we see involved in this, we're seeing the concept of the portal rapidly shift because of these business stakeholders being involved. And not everyone likes to go read reference documentation. I love reading reference documentation, but not everyone does.
Nelson, do you like reading documentation?
Nah, I just go right in there and grab a piece of code and try and see if it works.
All right, there you go.
That was my approach last night. And it compiled and it ran, so I'm excited. But no, I mean, definitely the portal has moved from this centralized physical thing to something that is more diverse and a little more virtual, in the sense that it's no longer just one thing, right? It's different for the product manager. It's different for the business. They're trying to get metrics around how well their monetization strategy is working. I mean, it's different things to different personas. And so the notion of the portal, I think, has shifted from what used to be hey, this is where I go read the reference documentation and the Swagger doc and try it. And, it's moved away from that. Yes, that's still part of it, but it's not your only strategy. If that's your only strategy, then it needs, you will move to the point where it's much broader. It will naturally evolve to that because it will have to.
I mean, so with the broadening of, the API universe, right, to more personas, is it broadened now to be a household name? Can you talk to your grandparents about APIs yet?
I think you can give them examples of what you can give them examples. I don't know if that is necessarily a household name, but generally speaking, there's a lot more awareness around APIs and the potential of APIs and what there has been in the past, right? It's again, it's maturity level of the organizations. It's people having more experience. There's more press. There's more conversations. There's people that specialize in that area, if you will. So yeah, it's not so much, you're not educating as much when you go into an organization in terms of why they should care. you're educating them in terms of how they get to the point where what they care about is real. Maybe that's the best way to put it, right? Yeah.
When I first started in 2010 with API Evangelist, and I'd go home for Christmas, everyone would say, "This is Ken. He plays video games for a living." They had no clue what it is that I did. Now they at least say he's responsible for like DoorDash and us getting our food delivered and Netflix, and so they have closer analogies to describe, like, oh, those API things he does actually impacts our life in some way. We still don't understand what the hell he does, and we really don't like it when he talks about these API things. But we know a little bit more than we did.
Well, this is for my own purposes, because I spent a lot of my career trying to get a metaphor, the ultimate metaphor, to describe what an API is and what it does. Some of the best that I've seen out there is, like it's a natural resource like trees, and you can build stuff with it, or it's like at a restaurant where the API is the food and the menus, the documentation. I don't know. I ask you folks, what's your latest metaphor describing what an API would be for my grandparents?
I historically have used. I started with the resource version. 2015, I switched and started using the restaurant, because like a restaurant and a menu, and then catering, is kind of like, hey, now you can do multiple channels, multiple restaurants in different regions. So there's a lot of good analogies there for business. And when I first started using that, actually the Google lawyers used it, because I worked on the Oracle v. Google copyright case. And so when I first wrote the restaurant analogy, they actually used it in the 2014 case before it went to the Supreme Court at the state level appellate court, and argued that, and successfully, that an API is like a restaurant and a menu, and you can't copyright your burger menu, because a burger menu is universal, and your API should be universal. But what's your secret sauce is the meat that goes into it and how you prepare it, and that your kitchen's clean, and there's a lot more to your secret sauce than your API. And that was kind of separating out the API interface from the back end, and I thought it was useful. But I find it starting to fail me now as an analogy, because it works well in us kind of know it, the people who know the space. But for the average people, I'm learning from the team member I just hired to focus on product management and helping API product managers. And she's really big on bringing it closer home to those meaningful things in our daily life. So the food delivery, the restaurant delivery, the Uber, getting a cab, those types of things, and grounding it in those meaningful things in our life, we're going to get more traction and more mileage out of those analogies.
Yeah, I don't think I've got it. I mean, I don't have a great one like the restaurant one. I use the app. Where's my phone? I use, if all that stuff on my phone, none of that would work without APIs. So that's simple as that.
That's a solid one.
I like that. I like that. Well, this has been fabulous. Really, really happy to have this dialogue. Obviously, the API world is evolving, and it's really great to have these industry leaders here today to be able to talk about where we're headed. I think we're now up on time. The last little plug for Nelson's book. We're definitely excited about the new world of blockchain. So check it out, typico.co book. And obviously, Kin, great author as well. I don't know if you have a new book on the horizon, Kin. Anything cooking you want to plug?
I do. Coming September. In September, we have the API First Transformation book coming out. So stay tuned. You can find it at postman.com.
Perfect. We'll look for that one. Absolutely.
Definitely so. And I think so. That concludes our latest episode of Typico Labs for Developers. Thanks for coming, and please, let us know if you have any questions or follow-ups.
Perfect. Thanks
all right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.